Hello. As COVID-19 continues to dominate the news headlines and divide populations and political parties across the globe, tonight's show is going to focus on a perspective of the pandemic that no mainstream media outlet seems interested in discussing. With me tonight is Dr. Theresa Bullard, a PhD physicist, teacher, author, and conscious leadership advocate who is fast becoming one of the world's leading authorities on bridging science and spirituality in ways that are easy to understand and to apply. The host of mystery teachings on Gaia TV and an international instructor for the Modern Mystery School, Dr. Theresa Bullard joins me now to discuss the spiritual and alchemical perspective on COVID-19, the personal and social alchemy that is happening as a result of the lockdowns, and her book, The Game Changers, Social Alchemists in the 21st Century. Dr. Theresa Bullard, welcome.
Thank you, Sandy. It's a pleasure to be joining you.
Good to have you. Now, you've been writing a lot of blogs lately on COVID-19 and the incredible opportunities it's offering us to become social alchemists and game changers who could help accelerate the evolution of humanity. Given your background, given your studies, given what you're doing now, it almost feels as though you were born for this moment in time. Do you feel that?
Well, I feel like I was born for these times of transition for humanity, but I never would have expected COVID-19, that's for sure.
I don't think any of us, I mean, of all the things that people were kind of touting as possibilities and envisioning, this was not among them, for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting time that we are living through, and I've been paying attention to the social, global kind of collective consciousness transformational process that we've been going through. I've been really paying attention at least since the turn of the new millennium, so since about 2000, and watching, the shift that has happened from, the 80s and 90s to the 2000s, and then how much it really started to accelerate in our world. And it's been quite a process because I used to lecture on this back in 2002, 2003, 2005. Nobody would think that there was anything really changing. But then all of a sudden, in the last 10 years, let's say, most people won't deny that there's change happening, that our lives are completely different than they were just 20 years ago. So it's a fascinating experience that's happening.
It is indeed. I mean, I moved to America in 1999. And at that point, steeped myself in the spiritual arena as it was in California then. And you've described this era as a time of quickening. And when I look back over the past 21 years, that's exactly it. It's as if what started off as this kind of floaty, sleepy innocence of, dancing in the moonlight almost kind of spirituality to something that has become very intense in many ways, incredibly intense, I would say.
Yeah, it's very, very intense for sure. And it's like we're in a time right now where almost like we've been given many opportunities to wake up and recognize the role that we individually and collectively play in the evolution of humanity and in what's happening on the planet, but we haven't been waking up. And, some minority has, but not enough of the collective. And we have to reach a certain critical mass of people awakening in order for that collective to awaken. And so it's almost like there's just this more drastic pressure that has come in recently to force that awakening. Because we really are at a very critical time on the planet. I mean, there's so many tipping points that we are facing collectively right now. And in history of humanity, just one tipping point would have been a huge deal. But we have a lot of tipping points all converging at the same time. But whether it's population size, natural resources, economic tipping points, environmental tipping points. So we have all these different tipping points that we're collectively facing all at once. And so it really is a critical time for humanity to shift.
I noticed something on your website where you said that combining your background in physics and personal interests in consciousness studies, you've long sought a way to find the link between science, spirit, and consciousness. And there are 3 questions that you've often asked. One is, are there practical solutions for bringing these different worlds of science and consciousness together? The second is, can we really use consciousness to harness the quantum field in practical ways? And the third is, how can we more actively step into the role of transforming our world to make it a better place? Well, I think, the answer to the first 2 questions is, an unequivocal yes. We can do all of that. And it's so interesting that this is happening at a time when science and consciousness are coming together, very much so. And, as to how can we more actively step into the role of transforming our world? Well, I think it's patently obvious. COVID has brought it right in front of us. It's presenting us with all of these opportunities.
That it is. And I've liked to look at the situation from an alchemical perspective. And a lot of times people don't have as much clear understanding of what do we mean by alchemy, but it's really just the transformational process or the evolutionary process. There's a sequence of stages that something goes through as it is evolving or transforming from a lesser state into a higher state. And that sequence is a natural sequence. It's something that we all go through every time we transform. And I have found personally that by understanding that formula, by understanding those steps that we go through, it really gives us more perspective on the types of experiences and transformations we're going through, as well as what we can do at a practical level to participate with the process and help speed it up, versus just being kind of at the effect of the process and not really making the progress that we need to make, especially right now on the planet. So that's a lot of what I talk about in that book.
Yes, and you talk a lot about the 7 steps of transformation, this alchemical process. I think it's very useful, as you said, to understand this. Could you go through those 7 steps in that process for us and just explain what is happening? Because you do say that this is a process that actually we can use. It can be applied in many different ways to our personal life, as well as at practical levels.
Yeah. So it's quite a bit to go through, but I'll try and do like real short cliff notes. So the 7 steps, they have these names that relate to chemistry or practical applications of them. But the most basic formula that they talk about in alchemy is they say to dissolve and then recombine. So to break things apart, to separate them, and then to recombine them. But in the process of separating and recombining, we have to go through several stages of purification, refinement, raising the vibration, and so forth. And we go through several rounds of this: separate, purify, recombine, separate, purify, recombine. And so the very first stage is called calcination, and that is essentially the first breakdown. It's a burning. It's destroying the old form that has corruption in it, and we want to extract the valuable pieces, the essential pieces from that, but it's all bound up together in this sort of corruptible form. So the first stage is to let the old form die, and to break it down, to burn it to ash. That's what calcination literally means, is burning to ash. And so usually that first stage is very upsetting, like there's some kind of disruption, major disruption that happens in our lives. And people can feel inflamed, angry. They feel like the rug's just been pulled out from under them, or everything that they knew as their old comfort zone and way of being is now crumbling down around them. So I think we can all relate to that experience. Just in this little, just from COVID-19 itself, that has definitely been happening. But we've been, we have cycles within cycles. So we've been in a much bigger cycle since the new millennium as well. And so in my book, I'm really talking about it from the turn of the new millennium onwards to today. And then after that first breakdown, the next thing that comes up is, in alchemy they call it dissolution. And I would say that we at a personal level could experience it as disillusionment. It's like there's a lot of emotion that comes up. There's a lot of confusion. There's this sadness, grief, loss, a sense of loss of the old. And we go through those stages of grief that start to happen here with that loss. And it can be a very it's like they say that the waters of the subconscious, it's very much associated with a watery element. So dissolution means to dissolve into a liquid form. And so everything gets, that was burned down to ash before is now dissolved in this water, and it becomes this sort of mixture, but it's a cloudy mixture. It's hard to really gain clarity of what's going on. And again, I think you can just relate that to just the COVID situation where, there was a lot of confusion, there was a lot of denial, there was a lot of sadness of, and fear, all those emotions that started coming up. And then, especially when the lockdown started happening and we had no idea how long it was going to be or when, things would start moving towards a little more normalcy again. And, so there's a lot of emotion that people started to feel during that time. And it was very confusing because there's mixed information and mixed feelings about it all. And then once everything is sort of dissolved into this liquid form, what we need to let things do next is to just settle down. So we move into the stage of separation. And separation is where it's really kind of a process of patience that is needed, where things, the dense sort of forms that are heavier and maybe ultimately might need to be discarded, they kind of sink to the bottom, and the lighter forms that are more essential rise to the top. And there's this separating out of the different, what we call the essentials. And when that separation happens, we can start to, at a very personal level, start to get clear around, well, what's true, what's false, what really do we need to change, what old ways do we need to let go of, what's really going to serve not just me personally, but the whole, the collective, and how can I be part of that? So so there's a lot more asking of questions. There's a lot of introspection. There's a lot of clarity, more clarity that starts to come in and helps us to start picking the pieces apart of, okay, what do we need to keep that will move into a new way of life, and what do we need to let go of? And once we can identify what those pieces are that we need to keep, then we want to bring it all back together into a new form. And it's, everyone's talking about, well, what's the new way of life going to look like? What's our new normal? So that is a new form that needs to still be figured out. We're still in the midst of that process right now. But there is a new identity, a new sort of way of life that starts to come in what we call the conjunction stage. So that's where all the separated pieces that are now a little more purified and identified get brought back together and recombined. And that conjunction stage, it's like, we're now going out into a new way of life, and it's good. We're starting to feel comfortable again. And it's actually better, it's a higher form than what we had before. So we're recognizing, okay, there's some real good that's coming out of this, and we see that this, this is needed. But it's a vision of what the future looks like, but it's not like in its highest state yet. So it can be a little easy for people in this conjunction stage to get kind of comfortable with, okay, we've just been through all this hardness and this hardship, but now we have things are kind of feeling comfortable again. We're moving forward again. We're feeling like we can rest a little bit from all of the challenge of the transformation we've just been through. And the danger here in the conjunction stage, even though it feels better, is like complacency comes in, that we might fall back into a comfort zone and stop doing our due diligence and the hard work and applying our will to stay focused on seeing the transformational process all the way through to the end. I think we can see glimpses of that happening right now with, with COVID just by itself. We've been through all of this. People are they're calling it quarantine fatigue, I think is what they're starting to call it, where people are getting really tired of this lockdown experience, and we're starting to kind of get a little like comfortable with just like, oh, let's just go back to our old ways of life. It's done, so we can just go back to the normal, but normal was the old normal versus the new normal. And then what we've seen is a rise of cases happening again. And so it's now pushing us back into, no, you're not done yet, and there's more to go, and we have to keep making more adjustments. And so that then forces us into the fifth stage, which is called fermentation. And I would say, in the bigger transformational process that we've been going through since the turn of the new millennium, we've been in this fifth stage, this fermentation stage, for a while now, probably since at least 2016. And the fermentation stage is like really this deep, introspective, facing your shadow side, facing the darkness, facing what's not working, telling yourself the truth about it. And it's kind of a struggle of letting go, like letting the old identity really die. But it's hard, because if I'm not that thing that I've always identified with, then who am I and what am I? And can I start to orient myself with more higher perspective of my spirit or my eternal being versus just this human, that it's okay to just sort of be this mediocre human, but in reality, our potential is so much greater. So it's a huge shift in perspective of who am I and what am I, that we have to go through to get past the fermentation stage. So the fermentation stage is often associated with the dark night of the soul. It's a death of the personality. It's a time of going into isolation and vision questing and deep introspection, deep soul searching. And in the physical processes of alchemy, we would literally take the solution from the conjunction stage and stick it in a dark closet where there's a little bit of a slow heat, and anything that is still corruptible within that state has to die. So the deeper stuff from the subconscious and the unconscious rises to the surface, and if you can think of like just people's own experience of being in, oh my God, we have to go into lockdown again, or we have to go stay at home again, and I don't know that I can handle being alone that much. And people kind of get into this bit of panic, and so there's a lot of people who are turning to distractions because they can't handle just being with themselves. And that's very unfortunate, because exactly what we need to be doing right now is being with ourselves and getting comfortable with that, and really looking inwards and seeing like, what do I need to shift? What's true? What do I need to let go of? What do I need to let die from the old so that I can really reclaim my true potential? And
I'm going to hold you right there, Dr. Bullard, because we do need to go to break right now.
Sure.
You're listening to What Is Going On. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and my guest today is PhD physicist, author, mystery school instructor, and host of Mystery Teachings on Gaia TV, Dr. Theresa Bullard. We're talking about spiritual alchemy, quantum transformation, and the revelations shared in her book, The Game Changers, Social Alchemists in the 21st Century. We'll be back with more from Dr. Theresa Bullard after.
The future of internet radio is here. Om Times Radio, IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow. I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
Hello, I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, host of Om Times' flagship radio show, What Is Going On? As a long-time editor, book judge, spiritual magazine publisher and radio host, I've read thousands of books and interviewed hundreds of authors and teachers, so I know what's worth reading and what isn't. Now, with the spiritual book market growing increasingly crowded, more and more people are seeking my help in finding the authentic voices, the empowering tools, and the genuine skip the BS guidance that will make the most difference to their spiritual development. So I decided to make it easier by bringing my knowledge, experience, and considerable network of contacts together in the No BS Spiritual Book Club. There are no ads, no joining fees, no obligations, and no BS. Just an ever-growing library compiled by recognizable and respected names of the 10 best books that help them the most on their journeys. Plus, free book excerpts, audios, and live video interviews where you can quiz them about their spiritual journeys and their 10 best list choices. Your time and money are valuable, your spiritual journey even more so. If you're looking for genuine guidance from people who've walked this path before you, check out sedgbeer.com. Click on the No BS Spiritual Book Club tab and join the club. That's sedgbeer.com, sedgbeer.com. I'll see you there.
A social distancing tip.
Putting distance between yourself and others is critical to slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are ways to stay in contact without the physical contact part. Call, send a text, set up a video conference, post on social media, dedicate a song on the radio. If you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #alone together. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Welcome back, Dr. Theresa Bullard. Sorry to interrupt you. I know we've got 2 more steps in that process to go through.
Yeah. So with the end of the fermentation stage, usually we know that we've reached the end when we have a vision, a really clear vision of the light, whether it's our own inner light or a vision of just more of a spiritual vision. There's just this whole new level of that aspect of our essential self that is not bound to this physicality or this condition or this old identity. And it's a very liberating experience, and it frees the spirit to now be able to rise to higher realms, yet also helping to elevate the vibration of the physical. So as we move into that next stage, which in alchemy we call it distillation, and it's now about everything that's made it through the fermentation stage and the previous stages of purification and eliminating the corruptions and the impurities, and we come out the other side of all of that. Now everything that's left, that remains, is this is our essential self. These are the pieces we need to keep, and now we just need to refine them further and elevate the consciousness. raise the vibration and, help it to connect more to that higher light and that higher potential. And so we go through this round of distillation. Now, physically, let me just describe it. So if you take a liquid solution, like a watery solution, and you put it in a distillation apparatus, you'd be heating it up. And as the water starts to heat up and boil, there's vapor, right? So it evaporates. And the more lighter substances will evaporate first. And then in alchemy, they believe that when it's in that elevated state of being a vapor versus a liquid, it is more receptive to subtle energy, to spiritual influences, to whatever higher vibration that we want to infuse into the vapor. You could, for example, some alchemists might do like some kind of Reiki energy or something like that around the vapors, but they're contained within the distillation apparatus. So they're not escaping out into the air, they're still being contained within this apparatus. And then once they rise up to a certain level, it starts to cool down. And as they cool down, they're going to recondense. So those molecules will come back down into a liquid form. But what they believe is that as it recondenses and comes back into liquid form, it's now also bringing that higher spiritual energy that was infused into it from the vapor state back down into the liquid state. And we go through several rounds of this, of evaporating and recondensing, evaporating and recondensing. Now, for us, in our experience, that would be more like a series of, or a daily practice of meditation, or some form of spiritual, practice, ceremony of some kind that raises our vibration up. It helps us elevate our consciousness to a higher level where we can gain spiritual insight, wisdom, heightening of intuition, and so forth, and have that higher spiritual perspective from that elevated state of consciousness. But then we don't want to just hang out and just be in bliss. I mean, we want to connect into that state, but now we want to take that energy and bring it back down and embody it into our physical life and apply the wisdom, pursue whatever visions that we were receiving from that expanded state, and now pursue that at a very practical, grounded level. And so we would make a daily practice out of this where we're very living our lives and letting our actions be guided by that higher spiritual wisdom and that more, higher vision that we are receiving in an expanded state of consciousness. And this becomes a way of life. So through the distillation process, you are raising vibration, maturing, learning to apply that into the physical. And by doing that, we're infusing spirit into the physical. We're raising the vibration of the physical experience. We're creating a better way of life on Earth. And
now that,
ultimately,
go ahead. That is the most concise and helpful explanation, that I think we could possibly have of, what's really going on if we want to participate at this level.
Exactly. And that's the practical application. And that's why it's so important for us to develop and cultivate a spiritual practice in our lives. A lot of times people say, well, it's so that I can, feel that connection to spirit. But really, we are spirit already. It's more so that we can embody that spirit into the physical and apply it to help make a difference in this world. So the alchemists always thought that our role as humans is to transform this physical earth into a more perfected state. But to do that, we have to be really conscious. We have to really have this mindset towards serving the greater good, and towards, doing what we call the great work, which is that we make our life be aligned with those higher spiritual potentials. And we have to work hard to maintain that level of elevated consciousness and purity, and yet also live in the world, not separated from the world. We're not trying to go off to the mountaintop or the monastery to live life from that place. We might go there for our fermentation stage, for example, to break free, but that's sort of just a stage. Then we need to go back into the world and really make a difference, and live, and from that higher spiritual perspective, bring that wisdom, bring that compassion, and put it into action towards serving the greater good and making this world a better place. So how can we individually do that? Right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think for many in the spiritual arena, they're aware that they came here for a special time and they've been in training all their life. But I think many think that they've already done the work, and they can just watch this unfold. And that is not so. I mean, now is the time when we really need to be working hard.
Yeah. There's so many people right now in the world who are really feeling very lost and very confused. And there's so many opinions and sources of information out there, but it's all conflicting. And a lot of it is just opinion-based or agenda-based. And so this is a time on the planet where humanity really needs the light workers, the people who are willing to do the harder work in their own personal lives to maintain that greater level of balance and a higher perspective of what we're dealing with, and then to be a beacon of light for others to help find some form of sanity amidst the chaos that's happening in the world. So I would say now more than ever, the world needs the more awakened people to really step up and be a force of good in this world, rather than just sitting back and letting all of the mass confusion consume people. And the only way to do that is to be out there, live by example, to share your voice somehow, and to offer. We're not here to proselytize anyone, but to be that beacon of light for those who are seeking it, for those who are trying to find their way towards what can they do, one, for their own, coming into greater level of mental and emotional and physical well-being again, because this chaos and change it creates a lot of stress and fear for people and anxiety, and those things are on the rise. And and they need tools. They need methods that can help them to find greater peace, inner peace again. And if we go with the idea that as the inner, so the outer, and that we're all connected, and that we want to create a world of peace, I would say that the coagulation, the final stage, is about that. It's about creating a more perfected way of life on Earth, a more like a world of balance, and sustainability, and peace, and prosperity for all, and harmony. And that's what we're here to create. But until we keep doing the great work and doing our alchemy personally and collectively, and then implementing wiser ways of approaching life on Earth into our society, we're not going to get there. It's not guaranteed that we're going to get there. We have a lot of work to do to make it happen. And
Absolutely.
so that's why it's so important for the people who do feel like, yeah, I'm awakened. Well, okay, now's the time where you need to step up and serve, so that we can really help be a part of that solution of creating that world of peace, versus just letting it all play out while we just sit back. Now, at some level, we have to. It's timing. There's a timing factor. When there's a lot of noise going on, it's a little bit hard to actually be heard amongst the fray. But there will be timing very soon, I think, where it will be time. So right now, I would say keep taking advantage of we're still in some of that fermentation stage. We're still in that time where we really need to have our introspection, our inner soul searching process, and getting more clear around what is my purpose, what role am I here to fulfill in this collective transformational journey, and what can I do to really help. And there are always ways, and finding that and just getting really clear. And it would be something that you are naturally equipped for at some level. and that is your love. You would love to be able to contribute in those ways. And so if you can bring your love into the work you do in the world, that love is a really strong motivator, and love can overcome the fear that is causing people to, retreat and shut down. I think the love will drive us forward. We have to find that within ourselves at a very core level. And it has to come from that inner spiritual connection to then be able to share it outwardly. And then we need to break through whatever is getting in our way, whether it's attachments to the old or fears or limiting belief systems, emotional attachments. There's these things that we still have to break free from and clear out so that they don't impede us in our as we step into action to serve and really bring some positive solutions into the world.
And it's interesting, you teach at the Modern Mystery School, and watching mystery schools enjoy a renaissance when they are so much needed. We'll come back to that after the break. You're listening to What Is Going On. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and with me today is PhD physicist, author, speaker, mystery school instructor and guide, and founder of Quantra Leadership Academy, Dr. Theresa Bullard. We're talking about COVID-19 as an alchemical process that can help us accelerate the evolution of humanity. We'll be back with more from Dr. Theresa Bullard after the break.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, Times Radio, IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. Times Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single Times endeavor. Host your show with Times Radio Network.
Hello, I'm Lisa Berry. Join me every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for Light on Living, a chance to see new, hear different, and feel more as I shine the spotlight on all the ways to lighten the load of life's challenges. Light on Living is your link to that new way you're looking for, that new understanding that will enhance your life, and that positive connection that will support your growth. So join me and you'll gain insight and start to see things in a new way that motivates you.
I'm Fidel Nshambo. I was born in a city called Bukavu in the Congo. We were a loving family, and then, boom, everything that I had disappeared in a single day. People think that when you are a refugee and they resettle you to America and all your problems are done. They don't understand that that's the beginning of everything. I was not born a refugee. I was made one.
It's time we welcome refugee families with open arms. Learn more at embracerefugees.org, brought to you by the Ad Council.
Welcome back, Dr. Theresa Bullard. You write that by taking a quantum approach in this transformation, we can reach higher states of consciousness and coherence. What can we do to raise our energy and to go deeper within to create the lasting transformation that is needed right now?
Yeah, well, one of the big things that I feel that we need is a paradigm shift in terms of our concepts of who we are, what we can accomplish, how our mind and how our consciousness and our thoughts affect things. And so I've really seen that, even though we have quantum physics and we have a lot of technologies based on quantum physics, and it's the most successful physics theory that we have to date, human thought and the way we perceive our world on a day-to-day basis is still very much influenced by an old Newtonian way of thinking, which is around reductionism, separatism. We're thinking we're separate. We're trying to reduce everything to its basic components and think that we can then understand the whole. Determinism, like everything can be controllable. and predetermined. And, and then we have this sort of survival of the fittest Darwinian sort of attitude still. And these really limit our ability to shift into the new paradigm where our consciousness can really take that leap. Whereas when you look at the physics, the true physics behind the universe and how it works, classical physics and those concepts is more like a statistical averaging. It's not really the fundamental principles upon which our universe or us are built. And when we shift into what are the fundamental quantum principles, they're completely turning the old notions on their head. They're saying that everything is connected, that time and space are not limitations, that instead of having absolutes, everything is based on context, and that there is uncertainty. Within that uncertainty, rather than fearing it and trying to control and make everything deterministic, when we recognize that within times of uncertainty, it actually opens up a world of possibility. And then it's, rather than fearing that, we can move towards it and see it as opportunity and say, well, what do I want to create from this time? How am I going to choose to apply my will and my creative abilities to take advantage of all these possibilities and opportunities that are available during this time? So it's a more empowered perspective of, I'm the creator here versus I'm just at the effect. It's kind of shifting out of a victimhood mindset to shifting into an empowered mindset of, we're the ones who are really in charge of what happens, and what we create in the world. And how we, it goes way beyond, for example, like just the power of intention or law of attraction stuff. I mean, that's a little piece of it, but there's so much more to it than that. And so I think that when we really bring the science in and learn from those principles of how the universe works at a very fundamental level, and then how can we apply that into our lives and our mindset, that it really shifts us into a much more empowered perspective. And this is where I see it also really overlapping with ancient mystery school teachings, because they've always taught that the power is within us and that there is no limitation as long as we can awaken to and remember that power that is within us, and then learn to cultivate our will and our ability to focus our mind and to quiet all the static that's going on inside, which meditation is a huge piece of. But there's more than just meditation, because meditation is one tool that's really, really important for that coming to stillness and being able to access that quantum zone and finding a state of coherence within our consciousness. But then we also have to tap into that, but then put that into action. And so there's other spiritual practices that are more active oriented, energy exercises, learning to harness and direct those energies, using different formulaic kind of ways of calling the energy forward and giving it a direction. You can call it ceremony, you can call it ritual. Different people have a little bit of stigma around these words, but there is a real reason that those spiritual practices have been there for thousands of years, because they actually empower us to step into the driver's seat and be a part of that creative flow and process versus just being at the effect of it. We can learn to harness those forces. So there's very practical things that happen when we look at ancient wisdom and ancient mystery traditions and metaphysics, and then combine that with modern physics and modern understandings and knowledge. But, it's like they need each other. I think that the science needs to be guided by the wisdom of the ancient spiritual tradition to help lift it to a higher level. But at the same time, I think that the spirituality needs the science in order to be grounded and practical.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So this is where I see if we can bring them together. Go ahead.
One of the things that you've done is you've created a quantum transformation formula, which is a step-by-step online training program. And I was looking at it earlier today, and I love some of the things that you're offering. We can't go into all of it now, but I especially liked the vibrational alchemy, how we can tap into music and specific rhythms and frequencies to support expanded states of consciousness, because this is what we need to be doing in order to accelerate our own growth and evolution.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the practical that I found personally that I gained through my training with the Modern Mystery School. Like, there's so many practical tools that come from these ancient mystery school traditions that are very practical and relevant to our lives today. They very much can be applied in a daily way of life. We can fit them in the little moments. It doesn't need to be like, just hours and hours and hours a day to have that kind of spiritual practice. But they really bring us into this state of balance and inner, like, you can be the eye of the storm. You can be that calm center, even though outside in the world there's a storm going on. And it gives us clarity. It gives us an ability to direct and know what should I be doing now. And so there's that quantum transformation formula is very much about our creative process and helping us go step by step through how do we manifest, how do we accomplish our goals, but in a way that really is aligned with that higher state of consciousness and that illumination that comes from expanded states and from tapping into the quantum zone. And, there's one tool that I can just offer now, which is what we really need to do right now to support our movement through this fermentation stage. And really all the alchemy is driven by the element of fire. They say in alchemy, all things transform by fire. And so in the tradition, what we find is that the symbol of an upright triangle is the symbol of fire. And you can also imagine the element of fire. So one of the tools that I give in my quantum transformation formula, which is just sort of a simple exercise that we can do at any point during our day, is if we're feeling some kind of emotional block or negative energy or a limitation of some kind, we can write it down on a piece of paper, create an upright triangle, so sort of draw that upright triangle maybe clockwise around, and then write inside of it all the things that you feel are blocking you, that you need to create some breakthrough around. And then once you have it inside that upright triangle, it's like you're invoking the element of fire, the breakthrough energy, the transformational energy into those areas of your life where you're feeling blocked. And then you can visualize it actually lighting on fire. So just visualize the element of fire, or imagine that fire consuming those things. And you could literally even go and take that piece of paper and burn it afterwards as well. And that's invoking the energy of fire into your life in relationship to those areas. So that's a simple tool that's very effective, actually. It does create a shift. It brings that spark in. And you can do it as many times as you feel you need. Anytime something comes up, just take this simple process, this simple exercise to help burn away the blockages, whatever they might be. And sometimes they might be attachments that you have that you didn't realize were actually holding you back. Maybe you thought at one point in time they were good, but now you're realizing actually they're getting in the way. They're holding me back. Maybe they served me at some point in my life, but now they're not. And I'm having a hard time letting this go because I'm afraid to let it go, but I know I need to let it go. So maybe write that thing that you're attached to inside the triangle and then do the whole fire exercise with it. Now, if you're going to light any papers on fire, make sure you go outside. Do it in a fire-safe bowl, like a Pyrex bowl or a ceramic bowl or stainless steel or something like that, so that you're keeping it really contained, and you're not putting all the nasty smoke from the paper into your home. So just a few safety tips there, and make sure there's nothing around you that could catch on fire as well. So
yeah. One of the things that intrigues me, and we don't have an awful lot of time left, but I have to ask you this, is, you studied at the University of Washington, Seattle. You had 12 years of experience in experimental research, including neutrino physics, atomic physics, quantum physics, crystal chemistry, nanotechnology, origin of life studies, and more. At what point, what was the catalyst that took you over to this side?
Yeah, well, there was two things. So number one, I was actually raised in a very open-minded family. So I had a lot of exposure from a very early age to multiple, belief systems, and nothing was really pushed upon me. So I was always given that freedom to make up my own mind and to question various dogmas. And so I was very, well equipped to be open. And I always had a sense of there is a spiritual existence in life, but I never personally gravitated towards having to identify it or figure it out until much later. So it wasn't actually until I was in graduate school, immersed in my PhD studies, having to do 80 hours a week of left brain physics between the classes and the homework and the research and the testing and all of that, 80 hours a week of just left brain activity. And after about a year of that, I found myself very out of balance and very depleted and not happy and really disillusioned with the whole experience of like, why am I even doing this? This is like coming at the expense of my happiness and my well-being, and is it worth it? And so I really went into this soul-searching process of, I need to figure out what's going to restore the balance to my life. And I brought all those different elements that I had in my life prior, social time, creative hobbies, athletics. I brought them all back in systematically, trying to figure out what's the key. And after another year, it was like, I'm better, but there's still something really important missing that's key to my happiness. And then one day I realized that the one thing I hadn't brought back in that was sort of there before, but it never really in front, was spirituality. And so at that point, I was a little surprised that might be it, because I was fairly well indoctrinated in the scientific way of thinking by then and skeptical, but it was the only thing I had. So I gave it a shot. And I knew at that point, if I'm going to pursue anything spiritual, it has to complement or at least not negate what I knew to be true scientifically. So I started to search into all the science and consciousness, science and spirituality, intersections, quantum physics mixed with, Taoist or Buddhist philosophies, things like that. And it really woke me up. It really got me excited again about the reason I was studying physics in the first place, and then reminded me that it was actually because of spiritual inspiration to understand the universe and how it works, and that there's some bigger purpose to our lives than just these sort of mundane experiences that we have. And so that then drove me into the spiritual search, and it really became my passion. It really became so clear to me that was the key to not only balance, but a sense of real meaning and purpose and joy in my life. And then from there, I was really searching for community, people that I could relate to that also felt this desire to understand the universe in a deeper way. And that synchronicity just sort of led me. I kind of put it out there to the universe, like, help me find my path, my spiritual family, my tribe. And synchronicity led me to finding my way to the Modern Mystery School. And once I was skeptical, but I was open-minded and willing to experience and have it verify itself through, does it actually produce results in my life? And that was the thing that really struck me, is because I had explored a lot of different things and, New Age and various, traditions and so forth, shamanic traditions and all kinds of stuff. But what I found with the Modern Mystery School path, which was an ancient Western mystery tradition based on Kabbalah and alchemy and hermetics and so forth, is that everything I did with them produced results in my life, and it accelerated my progression. And I realized it became it was a system, an ancient system of spiritual alchemy and speeding up our progression. And very practical, though, and very conducive to a scientific way of thinking. But you don't need to be a scientist to do it. It's like it just, there's something there for everyone, because it's such an ancient tradition that all the ancient wisdom traditions came together under one roof. I found it was like we explored all of it, and it was really oriented towards how do we apply this in our lives make a difference, to really help us in our awakening, and to understand things at a deeper level, but especially to understand ourselves and to remember, the potential that's within and the purpose that we're really here for uniquely. And and then I started to share some of those modalities. Once I got trained to be a practitioner in their system, I started sharing those modalities with others, just sort of on the side while I was still pursuing my PhD. And I got a lot of joy out of realizing that, okay, I was helping somebody else in their awakening.
It seems as though we've run out of time, Theresa. I am sorry about that. It's a fascinating story. I love it when we can bring the science into the spirituality. But I'm afraid that's all we have time for. So thank you so much for joining us today.